Hello everybody, it's Julia with Senior Susie Stamps, and today we're doing some abstract cards today. In the studio, I wanted to do some stenciling and some pen work. Now, I'm not very much of a doodler, never have been all my life. I used to do some when I was in high school, and I did a similar style as to what we're going to do today. So I thought I'd kind of bring that back and have just an enjoyable reminiscence kind of day. It's sort of rainy and cloudy here, and so it's a good day to just either have a nap or make some cards, and we're going to make some cards today. So first of all, this is abstract, and so I like to put my abstract pieces on a black cardstock base. So I've cut 4 pieces because we're going to do a full sheet today, and that'll make 4 cards. So I've cut 4 bases that are 4 by 5 1/4, and then I've got just some general sentiments, and we'll use these on the cards today. This one's from Stampin' Up. Once in a while, right in the middle of an ordinary life, love gives us a fairy tale. So I thought that would make some nice anniversary cards. And then this one is an Abraham Lincoln quote, and it is a PSX stamp, 1995. Stamps wonderful. The better part of one's life consists of his friendships, and that's truth. So I've got lots of ink, and the first thing I want to do, this video, I'm going to have to stop and start and stop and start and let some stuff dry up. So just giving you a little heads up on that. The first thing I want to do is to lay down some color on this blank white piece of paper so that I'll have a foundation. And I'm going to use this yellow, I don't remember what color it is. It's called Summer Sun. It's an old Stampin' Up pad. I got it used. Don't have a refill. At some point I'll have to find a yellow ink that kind of goes with this, but for right now it's good enough for what I want to do with it. And this is what we're going to do with it. I have some water in a little spray bottle here, and all I'm going to do is just add a lot of water to that ink. And then, and I know this crinkly stuff's probably going to drive you nuts, but it won't take but just a minute to do this. But this is just a package from some paper that I pulled out of the trash can, and I crumpled it all up so that it's got some texture to it. And then I'm just going to take this ink and lay it down on this paper, and go back and get as much ink on there as I can, and use that little bit of ink just as kind of a backdrop for this piece. And then I'm going to put whatever's left on the little pad here. I'm just going to add that right back in there too, so that all that ink gets used up that way. And you'll see then after it dries that it gives a nice little bit of color into the background of this piece. Let me show you some cards that I worked on earlier just for an example, and you can see this little bit of yellow back in the background of these cards. And so this is the first set that I worked on. I'll show you while that's starting to dry. And I used 2 different stamps on that one. This one says, life's most beautiful things are not seen with the eyes, but felt with the heart. And I thought that was a nice one. Of course, this is a John Lennon quote that probably everybody uses. Life happens when you're making other plans. And wasn't he right about that? So this is the first set of note cards that I made earlier this morning, just to show you kind of an example of where we're headed on this piece. So I'm going to let that dry, the ink dry up, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so this is mainly dry, and you'll see there's a little bit of warping in this paper. This is just plain cardstock. I should have mentioned that already. You could use watercolor paper for this, but I didn't. I don't know why I struggled to pull my watercolor paper. I've got it, but I just don't ever seem to remember to pull it to use. Let me get that little bit of ink that I missed right there. So now all I'm going to do is just to blank my mind and draw some lines. That's all I'm going to do, and I'm going to go all the way across the paper, and I'm going to put some circles and swirls in there. And all I'm doing again is just building a background, really, because we're going to stencil in on top of this. I'm going to turn my paper as I work it. And I'm not going to overdo it. But I do want to make sure that I've got some black ink on all four quadrants. And I certainly have plenty here. Now, I've been doing some research in neurographic art, which is helpful in stress reduction. And what we're looking for now is to get rid of these harsh angles in here so that you don't have things just stalled out into a big harsh angle. And just to kind of do a little bit of backing in with some more ink to close those angles into a nice soft curve. Now, I'm not going to do all of them because you can get fixated on that, and it takes a long time, sometimes depending upon how much line art you have drawn in to your piece. But I do want to do a few here and there. Just somehow get rid of that concept of that harsh line, and do a little bit of doodle in with that so that it keeps your eye moving throughout the piece a little bit. That's all we're doing. And it's a nice thing to just relax and do a little bit of on your pieces. And as I said, I'm not a graphic artist or a doodler at all. So I just do what I can in my studio, and I'm happy with that. And I'm just softening these lines down a little bit. All right, so that's all I'm going to do with that. And now I'm going to add some spatter to this. So let me get my spatter box. It's just an old shoebox. It's nothing special, but I want to go ahead and get my ink spatter on that. Now, on that first one, I used some acrylic paint, but it takes a lot longer to dry. So I think what I'm going to do is just use some black ink. I like to put mine on a acrylic block, and then I'm going to add just a little tiny spritz of water, not much, because if you add too much, it dilutes your ink down, and then you end up with gray, and that's really not what I'm looking for here. I just want some lightweight black ink spatter. And I try to remember to turn my box so that it evens itself out a little bit. There, and I think that's about all I want. As soon as this dries, we're going to stencil. I found some A4 size stencils on Amazon, and I think that's what we're going to use today. I haven't opened this one. The way I like to open my stencils is to cut down two adjacent sides on the package, which makes it easier to get them back in, because I do kind of like to have my stencils put back in the package just to protect them, because some of these little tiny pieces on the stencil can get torn up if you're trying to pull stencils apart from each other. So on this piece, as again, this is an A4 size, so it will work just fine with this A2 size paper. We'll get enough border to be able to trim it down just fine. And I'm going to take some tape and just tape my paper right to that stencil. And this is easy release tape, so it'll come back up without tearing the paper. Now, I've got several different inks here. I've got some greens. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference what colors you choose. Just choose inks you like to do this. And this particular pattern has some flowers and leaves, so I've chosen flower colors and leaf colors. And some black and gray, because I think that's kind of important to use in a piece like this. I've also got a hand-cut stencil. Now this is Tangelo Memento ink, and I'm going to go back with Rosebud on top of it. But I wanted to make the center of these flowers kind of a deep orange color. And then we'll go back in with the Rosebud to finish the petals out. And all I'm doing is just adding, wherever I see a flower, I'm adding some ink. It's just a real simple process, and if it gets on the stems a little bit, that's okay. Because, you know, lots of times your stems are not exactly all the same color of green. Anyway, so. Okay, now I'm going to switch off to the Rosebud. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to add the ink in wherever I see these flowers. And that orange will kind of make it a nice two-tone. Some of them, of course, will be more intense than others. That's perfectly fine. That's the nice thing about this piece. You can do really basically just whatever you want to with these kind of things. They're fun to do. They're relaxing. And honestly, I don't think I have ever had an abstract piece like this fail me. You know, I always generally put them on a little black background piece, and then I put just a plain white sentiment with a little black edge on top of them, and they usually just always do very, very well. So I have hope that this one will also. It's always fun to do the big reveal, isn't it? When you're doing stencil work. I think that may be the most fun of the whole project, but well, that's the pink and the orange, and I think I've got all the flowers done now. So I'm going to switch out to the green. And I'm going to do some in Pear Tart, which is a limier green than these other greens that I've got here. So let me look for some little leaf shapes that I want to put the Pear Tart on. And it really doesn't matter. All we're doing is just adding a little depth with color. These stencils came in a set. I got them from Amazon. I'll leave the link down below if you're interested. Now, I think it was a set of, I don't remember, 5 or 6 stencils. They were really inexpensive. And one of them came in, it wasn't in the best of condition, so, you know, when you get something that's really inexpensive like that, sometimes they just don't always come in perfect condition. But 5 out of the 6 are perfect, so I was happy with that. Now I'm going to go for a little darker green. This is Gumball. It's an old color. And I've got some garden green there, and that's what's on this brush here. These are kind of nice little brushes. I'll try to leave a link for those as well, because I've been using them for doing detailed stencil work, and they really are a nice little addition to the studio. I forget where I first saw somebody use these, but I believe it might have been Natasha Foote. I'm not positive about that though. But at any rate, I saw them and I thought, phew, I'm getting some of those. And yes, I have really been using them, especially on a piece like this where you're trying to get a little detail worked in right next to another area that's already got color in it. They work really well. So I'll link those below as well. I got them from Amazon, and I can go back in my history and get that information for y'all. One thing on this process that I like to do is to, after I pull my stencil, I'll go back in with my black pen and do some additional doodling on some of the areas. I think it just kind of helps a little bit. Move your eye around a piece. I think we're almost done here. I don't see any more. So, let me move this stuff out of the way. I'm going to go back in with another little stencil here. Oh, that's looking good. Looking good, isn't it? Come on now, say yes. Okay. I've got a little stencil that I made with a 1/4" square punch. Let me pull this off and do it like this. And I'm going to use some Memento black on this piece. And I'm just going back in and adding black into this piece. It helps, I don't know, it just helps somehow to add some little black thingies in your piece, either in ink splat or something. Some people use letters, and some people use numbers and other stencils and what have you, but I thought this was a good way to do it. And then I'm also going to add some of the same sentiment that I'm going to use on the cards in second generation inking on this. So bear with me while I get this part done. I'm just doing a 1/4 turn and laying my piece back down so that I've got some of this on all 4 quarters. And I don't care what's underneath it at all. I'm just blacking right on through it. Okay, there we go. There's that piece done. Now, I'll go ahead and do the sentiment stamps. And I'm going to do these portrait style. And I need a piece of scratch paper to stamp off on, because I want this ink to all be second generation. And I'm going right up in the piece all over with both stamps. So that they'll both show on all 4 quadrants somewhere. The scripts are different. The sentiments kind of correspond a little bit with friendship and love. And so I think they'll work all right together. And it'll make a nice little set of note cards that way. Now there's one more thing that I want to do before I cut this piece, and that is to go back in with my black pen and do just a little detail work on some of these flowers. Probably not all of them, but just some of them. And I'm just going to draw around the outsides of them. And I'm not paying that big of attention to the stamped image. I'm going to come down the stem a little bit. I'm just freehanding this, very loosely following the stencil pattern. Pick up a few leaves there. And what this does is it brings some of these flowers to the forefront of the piece. It's almost like they are the top last image that you've put down, even though they weren't. But it adds just a little bit more interest in for your eye to travel around and spot and look at a little closer. They used to, well, probably still do, some people do. I don't have a good printer, so if I put this on my computer to print it and make it into a masterboard where this was a piece of art that I kept copying and using again and again, it would look terrible because I'd print it on, of course, copy paper, and the colors wouldn't be quite right and what have you. Plus, I think this whole process is a lot of fun to do. So I don't make mine masterboards, I just go ahead and use them. But you could certainly make it a masterboard if you ended up with a piece that was just phenomenal and you wanted to save it and use it again and again, and just have an abstract file of art in your studio and use it again and again if you're able to print it on nice heavyweight cardstock and what have you. I just don't have the ability to do that, and so I don't do it. Plus, I just enjoy the process, and it's nice to be able to do some of these once in a while. It's one of those days in the studio where you just don't have to worry so much about anything. You just do what you feel like doing and make a few nice note cards, either as a gift or what have you. I'm thinking I might need to do that one, but I don't think I will. I think I'm just going to leave that as it is. Now, when I cut these, I want to cut them where I have as much leftover strip as I can, because it's useful then. So let me show you how I do it. You remember now, these are 4 by 5 1/4, so I want to cut these to 3 3/4 by 5. So I'm going to cut my 5" off first, and then I'm going to cut my 3 3/4 out, and that will leave me a piece that has some of that nice same ink on it. And I can cut this in half and use it on the inside then if I want to. And I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to pick which end I want to have, and I think I'm going to delete this end here. So I'm going to cut it to 5. And by 3 3/4. And there's one part of this that I forgot to do, so we're going to do that in just a second, and we'll just have to do it 4 times. But here we are. Now, what I forgot to do was to put my gold glitter on, which is fine because it takes forever to dry. I always on glitter do a little pre-test just to make sure that my glitter bottle is working right and I don't get this big glob of ick that comes out. And I'm going to take this glitter now, and you remember those lines that I drew in? I'm just going to run kind of sort of along those lines a little bit. Just freely. I don't care if it's exactly on those lines or not, but it just needs to kind of be close so that it will mimic the lines in the piece, and then these have to set aside to dry in a spot where Julia won't put her fingers on them. Glitter glue works perfectly for this sort of thing. It adds just a little bit more dimension to the card with the glitter and shimmer that comes up on it. And it's not an exact trail of the ink that's there, but your brain knows it's following that trail. And here we go. This is the last one. There. So here are the 4 pieces. I'm going to let them dry, and then I'll come back and we'll make the cards together. Okay, I think these are dry now. We'll find out if they're not. But all I'm going to do is glue them up. I'm going to use Books by Hand PVA glue, and I'm going to weight them down with these acrylic blocks because, as I said, this was just plain cardstock. So it did warp just a little bit. That's fine. It'll straighten itself out by the time you get the layers done. I'm just going to glue it on the black. Try to get my borders about the same, which is why I like to use that PVA glue, because it does give you just a little bit of wiggle room. And then, just in case they're not 100% dry, I'm going to go ahead and lay them on a piece of plain white paper and weight them for just a little bit. Well, I don't know if you can see that or not, but I guess my glitter glue wasn't quite dry on that one, was it? Or the one that was behind it. It's all right. Now, the one thing about this is you want to make sure that you get your script going the right way up, because otherwise it will look silly. I'll take these off of here. Flip that over to rub it down where it adheres to the card base. These are just A2 top fold card bases. And I've already gone ahead and foamed these little sentiments up. And I think we'll use the smaller one on this card. And when I'm doing a set like this, I kind of try to change my placement of the sentiment just a little bit, up and down, right and left, so that it gives the person who receives these just a little change of pace when they're doing them. And because you've got 2 different sentiments there, it really does make a nice little set of note cards. And the theme is the same, following through, of love and friendship. So they're universal cards that they can send out very easily. Let's see, maybe this one will work on this card here, I think. Yep, I think so. But you can see how easily these cards go together once you get all the little parts figured out. And it's a fun day in your studio. I'm going to link some shortcuts to neurographic art for you in the description box below, so that you can study a little bit about that if you're interested, because I think it's pretty fascinating. And some of the pieces that I've looked at and studied are absolutely gorgeous. Some of them are not, you know, they're not. It's okay. It's okay. It's the process that's important in doing this, and enjoying what you're doing. There. Now, I'm thinking one like this, maybe. Okay. And one more. Let me know what you think about these cards, if you like them or not. I happen to like abstract art, so I like them. Just so you know. But I also like other cards. And if your general taste is, ick, I hate that stuff, then let me know. And I think this one's going to go kind of right there in the middle. Let's see, maybe down here. Yep, I think so. I do want to completely cover that script up. There, so there they all are. I'll bring them back in, you can see them. Here's the 4 that we made today. And here's the 4 that I made earlier. I don't know how you'd have a favorite, but if you do, let me know. I always am interested in that. So I hope y'all enjoyed today and that you maybe are inspired to do a little freeform art in your studio. And I will talk to you again soon. Have a great week, y'all. Bye-bye.